The New York City mayor's race is shaping up to be a wild one. On one side, you have Eric Adams. He's the sitting mayor with just 20% approval rating. And on the other side, you have former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who you might remember resigned in disgrace over sexual harassment allegations. And to make it even crazier, Adams decided to ditch the Democratic Party and run as an independent. So listen, things might not be perfect on the Republican side, but what does this say about the total mess of the state of the Democratic Party? So here to break it all down is Chris Bedford. I know you wrote about this in your latest Beltway brief. You said that this feels like the final nail in the coffin for modern Democrats. So walk us through that.
We've seen the moderate Democrats having to flee the party over the last number of years. This has been a continuing tale, whether it's the DNC refusing to back a candidate because they're pro-life, pushing people like that out. Basically, there's a few moderate Democrats in the House clinging in the southern border in Texas, but not many who are actually still prominent at these higher levels. The Senate's a slightly different story, but the party has become extremely unwelcoming for those people. Now, while this has been playing out, you haven't seen a battle quite so prominent as what we're going to get right now. Remember, it seems like a million years ago now, but Andrew Cuomo, 9 years ago, was considered a moderate Democrat. He was someone who was supposed to be in that lane. He was liberal on the social issues. He was a New Yorker. He passed that atrocious abortion law, signed that into law and defended it. But he was a law and order person. He was a try to keep crime off the streets person. He was the sort of things that Democrats have actually straight up abandoned. He wasn't pro-legal immigration. And then you see him change. He kept on getting more and more liberal, the higher office he sought, the governorship, and then when he was actually being floated as a potential president, he had gone full left. America was never great, et cetera, COVID lockdowns. So now he's back, and he's going to Eric Adams. Eric Adams is the most prominent Democrat to have challenged President Joe Biden. Because of that, he was prosecuted by the DOJ for ridiculous crimes that didn't even involve self-enrichment. He was dragged through the mud by his own party. And now he wants to actually take a shot and run against Andrew Cuomo. So this is going to be a battle between people who originally were supposed to be those moderate Democrats, someone who now kind of represents that. And we're going to see if there's any home for him in the party. He's keeping the name. He's keeping the D next to his name, but he's not running for the Democratic nomination for mayor. And that's going to be an interesting fight.
It is as fascinating as you say. It's a great piece. People should subscribe and read it to the Bedford Brief. I think this is it's fascinating because we don't know the answer. It's not clear what's going to happen here, right? I mean, and I guess the first question I have for you is Cuomo was always interesting to me because he sort of had his own power base. Like you thought he's kind of like a mob boss, right, in New York. It's the way these big cities sort of operate. And he did get decapitated. He ran afoul of the wrong people nationally, really. And so now we have a battle for maybe who controls that mob, right? That mafia. And I don't mean that literally, but sort of, kind of, right? So who's going to take control over that colossus? Then in both cases, it's fair to say these guys have no real allegiance to wokeness or really, any of the remaining factions nationally, which are broken. So is this like two warring mob bosses in New York when there's just an open spot?
Yeah, so these guys are both extremely ambitious men. Remember, Cuomo was the secretary for Bill Clinton's HUD when he was like 31 years old. He was a young guy when he first came to Washington, was working in the White House in a cabinet, Senate confirmed position. He'd always had his eyes on the prize, and he was pretty close to achieving Democrats wanting him to run for president when they came down on him for sexual harassment, and he was so suddenly swept away by the moral panic that he'd honestly been a part of and helped stoke, and him and his brother had been pushing as partisan Democrats. But yes, at the end of the day, it is about power, and he's got a really strong machine politic behind him, a political machine behind him. That's why you have to see the actual sitting mayor run as an independent as opposed to fight in that Democratic primary, because he knows that all the machine politics really favor the Cuomos. Son, he's part of a political dynasty. His father, Mario Cuomo, was head honcho of New York as well. So the way this plays out is not, like you said, it's not obvious right now. Actually, I think it's the kind of thing that a documentary filmmaker ought to be following very closely. And then maybe if Cuomo implodes, we've seen this happen before, you'll get that great footage, like when they had a documentary filmmaker following around Anthony Weiner when he was running here on his return. And then the scandal broke down again. And it ended up just being one of the most interesting political documentaries I've seen in a long time.
Who could forget the great Anthony Weiner? We will never forget. And that is an incredible documentary. If you haven't seen it, anyone would want. Just for our audience at home, real quick though, on this. I mean, so are you saying? I mean, Adams is the sort of Trumpian figure, or using that sort of language, and Cuomo, but Cuomo is not someone who can go completely back to the old left either, in the way he's going to approach this race.
Well, Cuomo's not traditionally of the old left, but he's embraced it. Or in his last couple of years in office, he went full on America was never great. Black Lives Matter. We need to work with these activist groups to see if we can bring changes to the police department. Again, the unions don't want COVID lockdowns, rejection of Donald Trump at every single level. He went full blown. Now, Eric Adams he's no champion. He's not someone that I would like to embrace. I mean, I've literally seen him call his enemies Mein Kampf and himself crucified Jesus in the same sentence. He's that kind of just race-baiting politician where if you want to attack him, you're crucifying Jesus because he's black or something. But to see them actually, if you heard his announcement language and went through that, he did sound positively Trumpian toward the end. He was talking about cracking down on crime. He was talking about cracking down on illegal immigration. He was talking about New York for New Yorkers. That's the kind of message that is extremely rare these days in the Democratic Party. But New York's also a funny city. New York's the kind of place where you do have the conservative voting police unions. You've got the conservative voting working class folks. You've got those people, even in the poorer areas the Democrats have typically relied on, who've been plagued by crime and are really upset with the latte liberals and may end up backing someone like Eric Adams. It's going to be a clash of titans, though. It's going to be good TV.
Well, let's turn our eyes back to your city, Bedford, because the House Republicans, they're going to make the most of the 8 days that they're actually working this month. So I know that they're actually going out there and trying to get the stalemate broken now and get Trump's agenda finally moving again, which we want to see. Speaker Johnson, Representative Paulina Luna, tell us about the deal that they've made and how we can actually get things moving once again in D.C.
The deal they've made is a formalization of a rule that's always existed since for 200 years in the U.S. Congress, which is that when one member is burying a family member or out sick, getting a serious treatment or something like that, or maybe home with a baby, a member of the other party will agree, who would have opposed him in the vote, to not cast their vote on that issue. Or I guess in this formalization of bringing back of the actual rule as opposed to just a tradition and a custom that's been practiced, they'll have it so that the vote is logged but does not count. So you can still look at your congressman and say, here's where that person politically stood on the issue. However, it was marked absent because they were showing respect to this member of the other party, the opposition party, who was having a child. And that makes sense. That works. That's not remote voting. That's the kind of thing. Actually, when my wife was asking me what a good suggestion would be for this, I pointed to that custom in the Senate. It's like I'm a genius over here. But I guess it took these guys a week to figure it out. I was thinking I should have written about it and just sent it out there.
Don't tell that to Peterson. He can hear you.
You should have written about it. No, that's great. And so okay, but this is over, right? We don't have to talk about it anymore. The House, they won't.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it was such an attention-grabbing stunt that ticked off leadership a great deal. She put out a press release attacking her colleagues in the Freedom Caucus over this almost immediately, publicly. So she burned a lot of bridges now, and she's going to have to look around. And fortunately, the president, I guess, still has her back. He usually has a tradition, the custom of allowing one of his loyal members of Congress, people who work with him closely, to tick him off once, but not often twice. So I'm looking forward to seeing what is the next episode of the Pay Attention to Me sitcom.
Yeah, I mean, the less I hear about it, the better. It wearies me, but so do many things. So what would be nice is if we heard something about what's going to happen next. and they actually do work on, legislation and stuff. We have any hope for that?
What the plan is now, I mean, the House of Representatives has actually gotten through and finished their budget. And they've taken the lead. The Senate, if this had operated the way that Thune wanted this to operate, and the Senate wanted it to operate, there would be nothing done yet. We'd be talking about a budget in August. But they're actually going to try and they're still on schedule to get something done by Easter, where before they go on their next break, which I know you love, Jill, they're going to actually have the president's budget through. Now, that's all going to depend on how the Senate plays this out. The Senate really hates to work. We talked about this last week. They've been set up for so many different decision points where they're all going to have to work and they're all going to have to vote, and there's room for chaos. And there's just the budget in the House was so carefully negotiated on their extremely thin, razor-thin majority that there's not much room for tweaking. Usually they come up with a budget, they send it to the Senate tweaks it, sends it back. But this is the art of the compromise. This is the compromise package that's already arrived. And I know that members of the House of Representatives are actually having finally discussions with their counterparts in the Senate saying, no, you guys don't mess with this. This is the product. I need you to sign off on it. It's fine. You're fine. So there will still be some horse trading back and forth that has the potential to screw it up before they go to conference and really hash it out and then vote on it again. But if the House had its way, it would say, listen, boys, I'm done. You guys pass this and then send it to the president.
See, I feel like we've been spoiled by Donald Trump 2.0 because he has been putting out executive order after executive order. There is something new every single day from him. We were just talking with Nick Sorter. We're like, we need some arrests now, right? Like the FBI, Pam Bondi, like they all need to go out. They need to start arresting people, right? And I feel like this is what we're doing with Congress right now because as you point out, historically, the Senate would be waiting until August. Well, this is still doing it, a little bit ahead of schedule. So do we all just need to actually cool it for a second and give Congress a break? I don't like doing that, but is that where we are right now?
Yeah, I mean that's what I've been calling my sources all last week and earlier today and saying, "What are you doing?" They were all they were frustrated, and they worked hard to come up with any examples of what they were actually doing. But this is just the reality. Legislation is so much slower than it is for an executive, especially an energized executive that spent 4 years in exile trying to come up with exactly what it was going to do in those 100 days. Congress doesn't actually have any of that organization. It completely lacks it. And as you're fond of pointing out, they don't exactly have the strongest work ethic. Thune's actually made Congress work, the Senate work harder than Senates have in the last 10 years. He's given them the full work week, if you can believe it. He's threatened to make them come in on Saturdays. And that's how we got all those confirmations through. But this negotiation in the House of Representatives, the Freedom Caucus is the reason I think that you got anything out the door at all. And then on the Senate, everyone's sitting there looking at Mike Crapo saying, hey, Crapo, where is your work? And he's looking around saying, why is this my job? So there's just a few key people in the Senate that are holding this thing up, and hopefully they get to it.
They all need to get up to Chris Bedford's work ethic because once you get up there in the DC level, then things are going to start happening left and right. And we need it here on the show. We need the entertainment, right? Like the bread and circuses are fine, but we need some red meat as well out there from DC. Can you let the guys know that?
I'll let them know. Come on, boys, get back to work. We need some carnage.